29, take one.
You're on mute now, huh?
No. Let's see.
Right. Cue the bed.
The production designer was Mike Seymour, who'd worked with Ridley on commercials and things. Well, I seem to remember he had two art directors under him who've gone on to pretty good things. There was a guy called Les Dilley, who's now a production designer in his own right, and there was Roger Christian.
Yeah, well, a production designer is kind of in charge. He's head of the band, really, and works closely with the director and eventually with the cameraman. We managed to pull together this really good team, but it was hard work. And I remember a time when we were doing 7 to 8 weeks in the art department because we started shooting and we were building all the time. I think I seem to remember we had something like 120 construction crew working for the best part of 6 months.
The production designer, the concept designers who were in there were generally tense because of me. I don't think anybody else was leaning on them about anything, not even Ridley. But I was. I looked at everything that came out of that art department to see how closely it adhered to the designs that I had bled over. And when it didn't, I was very, very pushy.
I guess the only unconventional thing was that Dan was always there, going from drawing to drawing, and he was really shepherding this thing. And I don't know that they were used to that, because Dan meddled a lot, but he really cared about the movie, and it was Ridley that gave him the license to do it because Ridley liked Dan's advice and his input, and so the writer. Ron Shusett was there as well. So the writers had quite a presence on the picture, even though Walter Hill and David Giler wrote another version of the movie.
Les was taking care of the planet and the alien exterior craft and interior and the jockey, etc. Roger was in charge of everything to do with the Nostromo. And that's when I suddenly realized that 8.2 was nothing.
The whole idea of the main sort of set, and Ridley discusses me, was that he wanted the opening to be rather like being aboard the Marie Celeste, the famous ship which was found drifting somewhere with evidence that people had been on it, but no evidence of the people.
Ridley saw the ship very much as a metaphor for a Gothic castle or a World War II submarine, or something that still goes on in sci-fi movies, a kind of retro, accessible technology with great big transistors and very low-res video screens and everything. There's always a kind of a comfort zone there, because we all knew that even though they weren't readily available, that they would obviously have things like flat screens and they'd be high resolution, but no, we did it, with great big switches.
And I wanted to have wafer-thin screens that are plexiglass, that just float on clips. And of course today you've got computer screen is exactly like that. It's like plexiglass. Because I figured that's where it would go. But I really got those things of Jean-Giraud Mobius, when he would be drawing and speculating. A lot of his stuff you see 30 years ago is now.
The ship is a strange mixture of retrofitted old technology, a kind of an industrial nightmare, like being trapped in a factory or something. And so the way I wanted to go along with that was I talked them into all these industrial symbols around and color coding of everything. I thought that would be kind of cynical and create that industrial revolution feel, of people getting lost in machines, which I knew was part of the metaphor. Some of them were semi-humorous, so I was hoping that people would notice where that black meant a vacuum, and that and artificial gravity meant a red line underneath, and if there was no artificial gravity and it was black beyond this door, it meant don't open it, and so there was a figure of a little space person floating upside down, and stuff like that, sort of in stress. So I don't know, it went in all these directions, but somehow it all fit together. Ridley made it all fit together, and Ridley he's a wonderful artist, and he wanted it to look a lot like a Mobius designed ship with all kinds of rounded surfaces and with an Egyptian motif.
Ron Cobb was very good with the sort of mechanical device things, and had already had some concepts, because before it got to us, I think Bannon Bannon and Ron Shusett had sort of worked out some ideas.
I originally strongly suggested an idea of a ship that was very bizarre. It was all kind of a big hammerhead that tumbled to create gravity, and as it moved along, and and it was just too weird for anyone who could quite understand it. And so I wanted to kind of avoid the idea that spacecraft are just big airplanes that fly through a night sky.
Ron Cobb was of immense value to us. Alien One is a brilliant science fiction draftsman, and he has a mind that analyzes the situations that we used to throw at him. So the look of Alien is a combination of his very methodical science fiction mind, where he would create vehicles as they should be and as they would fly, and Giger's dark kind of symbiosis of the sexual and mechanical paintings. Those two things Ridley fused into one image, which was how we did Alien. I worked a lot with Les Dilly. Les was always an art director in charge of the construction and how things were made, and because I went through set decorating, and basically I developed this usage of scrap. On Star Wars, we didn't have a very high budget, and we couldn't afford to make all the sets, so I developed this idea of breaking down jet engines and scrap metal and things, and we developed the way how to make it look real, which is an art in itself.
So we visited a bomber graveyard of aircraft, and there's Canberra bombers and Spitfires and Wellington bombers and all falling apart. And we went out. Roger said, if I buy 2 of those scrap metal, we sell off the titanium because that's too expensive. We can dismantle. It'll take me a month to dismantle this, and we'll put him in organized pieces on shelves, and we can go in and we can make sculptural corridors. Then when that's right, then you can give me an okay on, let's say I do 6 feet, and you can come and have a look and say, yeah, I like that 6 feet. Because then once you've got that, then it can be repetition down that length of corridor. And we just worked on it that way, and it looked like it flew.
People would come on the set and just walk around and be amazed. They thought they were in a ship that was working. And I think that's the big contribution to the world of science fiction that really we made together as a team.
344 takes 7, A and B.
Where Harry Dean Stanton and Yaphet Kotto were working, they were sort of like the rude mechanicals down in the basement, arguing about their union rights and things like that. And it was Ridley's idea, actually, was that we built a long corridor, but to make it look longer, we put a mirror in at the far end, so slightly angled, so it looked like the corridor down, and then it went off like that. And it worked, good trick.
I was staring at the landing leg and H, because we used the same landscape then. Later, I said, I want to build a landing leg to show the scale of the Nostromo. So we built this 58-foot landing leg foot, which still didn't look big enough. And so I thought, make up 3 tiny spacesuits, and this will look twice as big. And so they did, and we put one of the cameraman's kids in one suit, and Jake and Luke went into the other suits, and because it was high, I literally shackled them on. So they were on, so they couldn't move. And if you overcrank, when they get off and walk, of course, they become adults.
Suddenly the spaceship leg was like doubled in scale, so it made it absolutely massive. There were the inevitable tensions between 20th Century Fox and Ridley and everything like that, because Ridley was pushing the envelope. I mean, designing sets that had one hadn't seen sets like that sort of at that time since Kubrick and 2001. I mean, absolutely incredible. A tribute to the Shepard Plaster Department, because all those Giger sculptures and sets brought to life were absolutely amazing.
Gradually down the line, I realized it made a lot of sense to have Giger design everything that was to do with the alien. That includes the landscape and the spacecraft, and then everything that was earthly, then it would be Michael Seymour and his team, right? And so that made a lot of sense, 2 separate brains working on 2 different worlds.
I did some drawings. So Ridley Scott liked to have the exterior landscape, the space jockey, the exilo, exterior, interior, all the alien surroundings. And I was very happy to do that because I was not so limited. They had not money to do it like I designed it. You know, the whole thing looks a little bit like Art Nouveau. It was not organic enough, organic-like. It looked like handmade from artists. The eggs have been very good. They look real organic. Yeah, the eggs and the area where the eggs have been. And also the walls, they have been very good because this was planned to go in the egg silo. There was a round, like a throw, and that was very nice. I thought bones, yeah, they are dried and old, but they brought this fresh from the slaughterhouse, and there was a smell horrible because the inside of the bones that was just fresh, and we had a big box full of bones, and there was such a smell that we even myself, I wouldn't see that as please go away with this. I only used dried bones, old, together with plasticine to do it. The scale was not wrong. It was too big. We couldn't find tubes and things of this size. So that didn't work very well. So Ridley always used smoke, everything dark and smoke, and that makes the thing much better than it is. I want to have a landscape who is very much organic like, and I would like to have old motors from motorcycle or things like that, big things to make a wonderful landscape, but there was not time and no money for this. A real mixed up, a real biomechanical landscape, that would be good.
Giger's sets were so erotic, and I mean, it's big vaginas and penises, and I mean, it's like, you know, the whole thing is like you're going inside of some sort of womb or whatever. I mean, it's sort of visceral and all of those things, and I think all those elements came into it, and that's what makes it really work.
On the so-called space jockey, which Giger, by the way, designed that whole set, the alien, and he hand-brushed the alien, airbrushed it himself, and got on a scaffold and airbrushed the whole set so it would have that eerie texture. But the thing was this: they didn't want to give us, it was too expensive a set. They didn't want to give it to us. They said, well, look, you're only in here one time. It's different if you keep using this set. This is massively expensive. This whole big creature and this big back wall. They're saying, no, we can't give you this. It's absolutely too expensive. I think it was like $400,000 or $500,000. They said, this is not your main set. You're just going to have to walk by and see a skeletal imprint in the mud of this 15-foot creature. And then you'll walk into this strange-looking building. It doesn't have to have these immense walls. It'll be a bunker or something that's weirdly constructed at angles. And that's it. We can do that cheaper, and that's where we got to stop you. Some of these things, you're just going wild.
But the space jockey was one of those things I said, look, I can't cheat this, you know. It's got to be real. It's kind of the cockpit or the driving deck of whatever this craft was. And Giger had done this drawing, which I loved, and I said, this has got to be it.
But Ridley and I kept after him. He said, look, we need this because this is our Cecil B. DeMille shot. You got to have this so that when they see this, they know it's just not a little, like we were going to do a Roger Corman movie. You got to have the people walking in, not miniatures, camera pull back, and they're on this thing, and it's the most amazing set you've ever seen. Your jaw drops, and you know you're watching an A-level movie.
Ridley sort of was, loved having sets, so we would go on discussing ideas for sets and things, and so he would want something more. So I would get designed like storerooms and other pieces of action, and I kept building sets. And the guy from Fox, who was kind of very concerned about the fact we were running over schedule by like 4 weeks, was doing his best to stop that happening. So he would find out where I was building a set and have them pulled down. So we never got to shoot them. That happened on 2 or 3 occasions.
There's this set, which I think was an air shaft set or something, and there was this continual tussle with Ridley saying, I want that set, I want to shoot on that set. And Peter Beale would go around knowing exactly what Ridley was like. He'd discovered over the weeks of shooting, and he would actually do a sort of like a march around the studio and look at all the stages to make sure that all the sets that were being built, there was nothing that was being built without his approval. And I seem to remember it was this tussle of him saying, that is not going to be built, we're cancelling that set, and Ridley saying, no, build it, build it.
I mean, you know, it's one of those things that we could have gone on and on and on. You know, we'd have built other things and bigger things and more spaceship and more hidden trannies. I mean, there's whole sequences which were cut out. There's a sequence where initially the alien creature gets Skerritt, the captain, and then he cocoons him and he's stuck to a wall in one of the storerooms, and he's become sort of food for the alien creature, and he's just glued to the wall. There's no way she can rescue him, so she burns him.
Walking on those sets, walking on those stages, and seeing the richness of design and texture, it began to get to you, literally physically. And then, of course, when we started to shoot and Ridley pumped the smoke in there, you were now in ghostly surroundings. What one realized is that we were doing, that Ridley was bringing this picture to the highest possible creative level, design level,